here right now, except we've got a lot of cameras here. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. You know, I kind of feel like I should be announcing my presidency of something right now with all the cameras in the room and people. So good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Keys, and I still remain the Superintendent for Student Success at Toronto Catholic. Thank you. These are challenging times, and I think we all will acknowledge that. But I think today is the day that we think about the positive in what we do and where we are, and I think that's probably the hallmark of Toronto Catholic and what we do, and it's frankly the hallmark of our church. I think, as I pointed out to people a while ago, our church was founded by 12 apostles. Our Lord founded it, but the 12 apostles were rather poor fishermen. They tended to get lost a lot. They tended not to be able to recognize our Lord when he saw him, and yet somehow or other we were able to build a church by wandering all over Asia Minor, developing that church. So when people worry that are we the ones to do this work, do we have the capabilities, my answer is take a look at the apostles. They did it, so can we. So I begin with this scriptural quotation at the front here, which is the Jesuits use as sort of one of their founding ideas. And it says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is fair, whatever is pure, whatever is acceptable, whatever is commendable, if there is anything of excellence, and if there is anything praiseworthy, keep thinking about these things." This, to me, is the centerpiece of that optimism of our faith. Recognizing the challenges we have, recognizing we could spend all of our time fretting and worrying upon a stage, and yet I think this piece of the New Testament is key to who we are and where we are in the world. So, and I sort of would dedicate our day in the sense of that. We are in the pursuit of whatever is noble, whatever is commendable, and whatever is excellent, because that's, I think, how we gain that equity of outcome for all the kids we work with. So with no further ado, I'd like to move into our prayer today, and I have actually called upon some Confederates within the group to lead us in that. Oh, sorry, we've got to go to the next slide. Thank you, John. My chief prompter is prompting me here. So, of course, Mother Teresa had this wonderful line about a pencil. I am a little pencil in the hand of a writing God who's sending a love letter to the world. It's hard for us as humble people to actually believe we're doing that sometimes, because sometimes we have to write letters that are very hard, actually. And I'm not joking. And yet, that's what we're called to do, to be those letters and pencils. So I'd like to call upon some of my Confederates, as they say, to read one line after another for us, and we'll just silently meditate upon that. John?
The pencil maker told the pencil 5 important lessons just before putting it in the box. Everything you do will always leave a mark. You can always correct the mistakes you make.
What is important is what is inside of you. In life, you will undergo painful sharpenings, which will only make you better. To be the best pencil, you must allow yourself to be held and guided by the hands that hold you.
Okay, so we go to the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. My prayer for us today is that we're all held in God's hands, and we're aware of that. And we'll begin with a Hail Mary, please. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Oh, I forgot to say, John Baptist de La Salle, pray for us. No, pray for us. That's for Mr. D'Onofrio, by the way. Okay. A couple of things. First of all, you may notice some of these neat chairs up here, by the way. That is the work of a whole group of teachers. Next year will be our year of charity, and yes, you don't have to pardon the pun. And the wonderful artists, that creativity, those works of the imagination of students and teachers and who knows who else have developed some of these chairs. We have plenty more chairs, by the way, at the board. And in fact, I think we'll have close to 200 chairs for exhibition. And they tell a story. And as they say, I just wanted to draw your attention to that. For the more prosaic things, by the way, but the washrooms, they're just straight out this hallway, and then I believe to the left, or is it to the left? To the right. To the right, I just pointed. That's my left, your right. There we go. By the way, I worked at this building for 3 years, about 100 million years ago, so it hasn't changed that much. So if you're really lost, just ask me. I'll help get lost with you. Because the point of this building, by the way, that Raymond Moriami designed is for you to actually literally get lost. It's designed as a Buddhist temple, actually, and as you enter down those long hallways and you wander about the spaces, it was very purposeful in its design to allow you to meditate and think about things and take a journey where you encounter stuff you may not have encountered before. So at any rate, I have the great privilege of actually introducing our Director of Education. Am I right in the sequence here? Yes, and there we are. She's now waving, Miss Angela Goche. So, Angela, do you want to? And Angela has no words to say today. She has mercifully declined to comment. And so I think we'll get on with the course of the day and ask the other lady in the red jacket, Ms. Jan Murphy, to introduce a rather notable speaker that we have here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, and welcome to everyone. It is indeed an honor to introduce our speaker. I feel like I've known Ron for years. I had the pleasure of picking him up this morning at the hotel, and it was so, I just walked up, waved, I could see him, there he was, and it was as though we've been friends for so many years. Ron is in our midst throughout the course of this year. Our journey formally started centrally back in October when we had the pleasure of meeting some of the principals that work in Expeditionary Learning Schools. So throughout the course of the day, you're going to be learning a little bit more about Ron's work and Ron's school, and I think it touches nicely with everything that we have been working on this year through our year of charity. So Ron Berger is the Chief Academic Officer for Expeditionary Learning Schools, EL Schools, as we like our acronyms. It is a network of over 160 schools in 30 states, and an organization that partners with districts and charter boards to found public high schools in low-income communities that send all graduates to college. It helps transform existing public K-12 schools towards high student achievement, character, and citizenship, very similar to our Ontario School Catholic Graduate Expectations. EL's core work is building character teacher capacity through professional development, professional resources, and Common Core literacy curriculum, much like our EQAO curriculum. Ron works closely with the Harvard's Graduate School of Education, where he did his graduate work, and currently teaches a course that uses exemplary student projects to illuminate academic standards. He is an Annenberg Foundation's Teacher Scholar, received the Autodesk Foundation National Teacher of the Year Award. He is the author of 4 books, one of which you received this morning, An Ethic of Excellence, one of my faves. He is also the author of Leaders of Their Own Learning. Just received this in the Courier yesterday, his newest book, Transformational Literacy, as well as A Culture of Quality. Ron was a public school teacher and a master carpenter. If you read the back of his book and get into An Ethic of Excellence, you'll see that carpenter connection. His writing and speaking center on inspiring quality and characters in students, specifically through project-based learning, original scientific and historical research, service learning, and infusion of the arts. Thus, today at the Science Center, we felt was a natural link to our messaging and our work on inquiry. He is working with the National Character Education Movement to embed character values into the core of academic work. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce to you Ron Berger.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to be here all day, and I have a lot of things to share with you, but they are not scripted. So you should feel free at any point during the day, during this morning, during this afternoon, or during the course of the day, to ask questions, find a push, find to ask hard questions if you wish. Because what I hope you'll take away from today is not just some inspiration, but some tangible examples of strategies or frameworks or thoughts that you can actually use tomorrow. I am really hoping that there'll be some practical connection for you here. I've spent the last 40 years working with schools. So at my heart, I'm a teacher. Right now, I'm responsible for 160 schools, but it's the teachers that are the ones that I connect with most deeply, because I don't actually feel like there's any magic solution to helping students become great. There's no quick fix. There's no way to infuse a new curriculum, new money, new idea, and it's going to fix everything. In the end, it all comes down to how much students care about doing well. How can we inspire them to care? And I think that, unfortunately, we're in a pretty impatient world right now where everyone's looking for a quick fix. Everyone's looking for this new thing, this new legislation, this new curriculum, this new test, this new push that's going to fix everything, and there is no quick fix. Students will do as well as they care to do. And sometimes I think we make the mistake of assuming that kids from certain backgrounds or neighborhoods are predisposed not to care, and so it's not going to work because they come from family situations or economic situations that are just too challenging. That I don't believe. I believe school can be that place where we inspire kids to care. But there is no easy solution to that. It's a whole school culture of working together to get kids to be their best selves, to try harder than they thought, to do more than they thought they could do. So I'm going to speak to you this morning, but mostly I'm going to show you student work through slides and through video. And I'm hoping that you'll see ideas or visions in that student work that connects to your own work in some way. If you're not seeing that connection, it's fine to ask questions, and I'll take questions throughout, not just at the end. And I'll encourage you to talk at your tables to see, is this connecting in any useful way with your work? The first thing I want to do is show you a video that sort of frames the organization I work with now. I should say, first of all, that I'm not trying to sell that organization to you. We're based in the States, and we actually don't work outside of the States. So even if you said to me, we want to become an expeditionary learning school, I couldn't do that with you. There are schools in lots of different places in the world that are inspired by our work. So I just worked with a school in northern England, for example, that's based on our model. And we have a school in Rwanda based on our model, and a school in India and in Singapore based on our model. But they're not officially in our network. We don't have an international branch. So I'm not here to say you should do this, you should join our network. We're a nonprofit that's dedicated to trying to promote a vision of education that's about more than just preparation for tests. It's about creating better human beings. And we're doing that in every possible way we can. We have curriculum that's open source and free. We have a collection of hundreds and hundreds of examples of exemplary student work that's open source and free. We have videos that are open source and free. So really what I'm here today is to be a co-traveler with you, to say anything we've got is yours to take in any way we can give it to you. I'm not trying to recruit you to join us as an official way. I'm trying to recruit you on our mission to remind ourselves that public schools and private schools and charter schools all have the same mission, which is not a mission of getting kids ready for a standardized test. It's getting ready to create great human beings, the kind of human beings we want to live with for the rest of our lives. So I'm going to start with a video, actually. And this video is, I'm sorry to say, a little bit promotional, because it was made by my organization, so it's a little bit promoting our vision. And it's about this notion of why we're crazy to separate character from scholarship. If you think in your mind, what are the words that would describe a great scholar? Every word that would come to your mind now is a character trait. Now, I don't have to tell you, because as part of your faith, you understand that your job is creating great human beings. It's not just creating scholars. It's creating scholars with the right integrity and heart. One of my colleagues for the past 15 years in character education is Tom Lacona. Don't know if you know his work. He's a Catholic educator in New York State and nationally known in the States. He separates character into two different categories: performance character and moral character. and he says that both are important. So moral character is those things that connect to your faith in terms of creating human beings that are morally pure and good, who treat other people respectfully and do good for the world. Performance character are those aspects of character that keep you organized, reliable, working hard, showing up on time. And Tom Lacona says, using a deeply faith-based argument, that you need both. You can be an extraordinarily good human being, but if people can't depend on you to get your work done and be hardworking and be there on time and do a high-quality job, nobody can depend on you. What good are you? On the other hand, you can be awfully efficient and good at things and get things done and be prompt and be hardworking and have a lot of grit, which is the big word in the States right now, and a lot of perseverance, and you can be a jerk of a human being. And you can hurt people and you can hurt the world. So you need both. You need both the sort of grit and perseverance and organization of performance character, and you need the depth of moral character. So when I use the word character here, I hope you'll see it in both ways. This is a short montage video of why the organization I work with is heartily embracing the word character. And I will tell you, in the States, character is a touchy word to use. Character and values are words that public school districts will not use. Because in their mind, values and character are connected to faith and religion and ethnicities and cultures, and it's too scary. You can't get there. You can't teach values because whose values are you going to teach? And we would say that the experience of schooling imbues values in kids. You have no choice about it. The experience of schooling is teaching kids how to treat other people well, how to be good human beings, or it's not. It's either helping them or making them worse. And so you better take it on explicitly and intentionally and make the character education a central part of what your school is about. I don't have to say that to you because you embrace that. I will tell you that our message is against the grain of public education in America to embrace this deeply and admit that we better be doing this well. So this video is sort of saying you got to take both on to succeed.
Who am I? I suppose it is the very question that men and women alike have spent their entire lives trying to answer. And I suppose the difficulty in the question lies in the fact that one's life is the proof of that answer.
Hello and thank you so much for coming. In Windsor 7, we've been working on an expedition called Small Acts of Courage.
The remarkable academic success of students at expeditionary learning schools has a profound origin.
Our presentation today is dedicated to our interviewees. We thank you for your time and we thank you for your stories.
The EL model joins academic achievement to character, unleashing student hearts and minds toward growth. Students are on a mission to contribute as scholars and citizens to a better world.
Windsor 7 is honored to present our 4th volume collection of oral histories related to the Civil Rights Movement to the African American Collection of Maine.
6 feet from hydrant, 6 feet from driveway. Today we're doing field work and we went out around neighborhoods to see where we would actually put trees. For large trees we have yellow wood, green ash, English oak. We had to visualize and see what kind of tree we were going to put there. If it was to make shade, if it was to make the place look better.
Could be a Japanese alcova.
Length is 24 centimeters. It's song. I can probably imitate it for you.
Okay.
It's like...
I got involved because we helped start a program called Bird by Bird, where we provide bird watching equipment and act as citizen scientists. So take real data and be a part of this global database that tracks birds.
It builds a ramp up to it, nested with sticks, so it just walks out of the water and goes to its home.
That sounds like a very smart bird.
It very is.
Students build personal and academic courage to step up as scholars and citizens. They take charge of their own learning, speaking up in class, in the community, and giving formal presentations of their growth and challenges to public audiences.
Hello everyone. This whole entire presentation is to prove to everyone that is here that I am ready for 11th grade.
My name is Trinity. I am in kindergarten and my school is called Delaware elementary school. With our words, we are coming. Here are two of my reading strategies. To do a student conference, you can be in first grade, second grade, or third grade, or fourth grade, or fifth grade, or you can be in kindergarten.
When we looked deeper into this question, it became clear that the biggest single reason so many kids failed in school was illiteracy. So we decided to try to do something about it ourselves. Our school, the Santa Fe School for the Arts and Sciences, had always taught us to believe that by changing our own character, we could change the world.
EL students are not working only for themselves. They are working to help their classmates as well, supporting each other, critiquing each other, and holding each other accountable for quality.
His job in first grade was to draw a butterfly. Austin had to use this photograph as his model. This is called a tiger swallowtail.
I knew it!
Toby, what would you say?
Don't put those little tail things so pointed in. I'd say put them more pointed down.
Let's look at his last draft. And what do you think?
He made like a lot of progress. He persevered doing it.
And the nugget of space here should be a little bit smaller. And the nugget of space here could be bigger. So I like how your scales are going to the direction of where the body is. Like something that you can work on, like a stair, is trying to make all the scales the same size. Not like small. I had to make them big because you know how it's facing.
I have a quote from Act 1, Scene 7. Macbeth says, "If we should fail," and Lady Macbeth replies, "We fail, but screw your courage for sticking place and will not fail."
Shakespearean language is a very different language than our modern English and what we're used to, so it definitely did take a lot of academic courage, especially me, where I came from a different country, and that was definitely a challenge for me, trying to adapt to all those, that new language.
The females, when they were more submissive and just listened to the males.
I disagree because in the end it changes, and Macbeth says, "The mind I sway by, in the heart I bear shall never stand."
Stepping up to sharing a different idea or maybe disagreeing with something else, that's something that's very difficult sometimes. You don't want to seem like, oh, I don't agree with you, you're wrong, but you do want to share your ideas and you do want to, interpret their text in a different way to challenge them. Back then, the person would have fear of you. This school has taught me to push myself. One of my goals is definitely attending college, something that was not accessible to me before I came to this school at all.
So I'll end with a great story. Estefan Rodriguez, good-looking young guy right here. Could not speak a word of English when he moved to the United States from the Dominican Republic at age 9. Today, he's one of the top students in his senior class at Washington Heights Expeditionary Learning Schools, or WHEELS. Last month, he and his classmates put on their WHEELS sweatshirts and marched down the streets of Washington Heights in New York City through cheering crowds. Parents and teachers, neighbors, you would have thought it was the Macy's parade. The march was to the post office where they mailed in their college applications. And this son of a factory worker who didn't speak much English just 6 years ago won a competitive scholarship to attend Dickinson College this fall.
Joining academic achievement to character, students in expeditionary learning schools are on a mission to contribute as scholars and citizens to a better world.
We don't want these to be the exceptions. We want these to be the rule.
I was fortunate enough to know Esteban Rodriguez personally, and he did not invite me to the White House when he went. I will tell you, though, it was very interesting. He and his mother were invited to the White House, and she refused to go. She was not legally in this country. And when she was sure that when she would be invited to the White House, that would be the end, his brother, whose English was much better than his mom, did go with him. And my friend Brett Kimmel, his principal, went with him, and I just wished I'd been invited to come. He was at the State of the Union address this year, He is now a very successful sophomore in college. So very proud for him. Let me start with a story. I live in Western Massachusetts. I live rurally. If any of you have read this book in front of you, The Ethic of Excellence, that's where I still am. It's still my world, living in the woods. The nearest city to me is the city of Springfield, Massachusetts. This is a typical U.S. northeastern city. It's the kind of city that had a lot of industry 50 years ago and almost zero industry now. So now there's a lot of unemployment, a lot of poverty, a lot of closed up buildings. Things aren't going so well. All the jobs that were there 50 years ago are pretty much overseas now. There are 6 public high schools in the city of Springfield. 5 of those public high schools, and 1 Catholic high school, I should say, 5 of the public high schools graduate 60% of their students. So, here we are on a Tuesday morning. Think about the 40% of the students in Springfield that are not graduating from high school. What are they doing this morning? How many of them do you think are employed? What do you think the unemployment rate is in Springfield if you are a low-income minority kid? It's over 50%, which means there are thousands of kids without jobs, without a lot of hope. There is one high school in the city that's graduating 100% of, 98% of the kids are graduating on time. 100% of them are getting into college. You saw Leonore right there presenting at her passage presentation in 10th grade. This year she's graduating. How do I know she's going to college? Because every single kid every year from this school goes to college. What's the difference? This school has the same kids as the other 5 schools. It's not a special admission school. It's not an exam school. It's not a school that takes any special way to get into. It's a neighborhood school with a lottery to get in. Anybody can get in. It's the same kids. So often I feel like we as a nation in the U.S. say, it's the kids, it's the families, it's the single-parent homes, it's the low income, it's the everything, when really it's us. We're not holding up our end of things because these same kids are succeeding here. And they're succeeding here because they have a different mission. Let me just be honest about it. I think that in my country at least, and we're a little bit more self-consumed than Canada, just to be clear about it, you know. The U.S. is a very self-interested, self-aggrandizing country in many ways. And we think that the best way to appeal to kids is to say, you need to get your degree so you'll make money. You'll need to get your degree so you'll get ahead. That's not what they say in this school. They say, you need to get your degree because who is going to help your friends? Who is going to help your family? Who is going to help your community? Who is going to help the world if not you? We are putting you on a mission to help the world and to help everyone you know. And without a college degree, you're in trouble if you really take that mission on. They don't see their charge in this school as helping themselves. They see it as helping their friends and the world. I went to public high school in the States. I was a very good student. My job in public high school was to get myself into college. Just me. And in fact, the worse my friends did, the better for me. Because the worse my friends did, the higher my GPA would be, right? My grade point average would look better. It was every person for himself or herself vision. In the schools that I work with now, that I'm privileged to work with, those students see their mission as very different. They see their mission as, how do I get myself and every single one of my classmates into college? And until we've all made it, we haven't succeeded. Every day a new kid is accepted in college, it's announced over the loudspeakers, and every kid cheers. Their mission is their team, not themselves. Let me give an example of a project that I was fortunate enough to be around at this school. 9th grade science students at this school created what they called a green print, a blueprint for a greener city. These students met with outside experts, city engineers, and they were trained by city engineers to do energy audits of city buildings. So these kids could go into a building and look at window treatments, look at insulation, look at HVAC systems, look at boilers, and figure out where was the building well insulated, where was it not, how efficient was the boiler, how was it not. They learned to use monitoring equipment to see where it's losing heat, where it's losing electricity. Then they prepared a professional level energy audit report for those buildings. They then prepared a report for the city saying, let's just look at the schools. How much are you losing money because your schools are energy inefficient? How much money would you have to invest to make them efficient? And they did a cost-benefit analysis of how long would they have to invest, how much money, and how long would it take for that to pay off their investment. They said in a public announcement in Springfield that if the city were to invest $156,000 into renovating schools, they would make all that money back within 5 years, and they'd start saving money and saving the environment. So the mayor, because it's public, had to go back and actually do something about it. And he didn't have to act on it, but he had to make a decision about it. So he went back to his team and said, what do you think I should do here? Now, I'm going to look bad if I don't respond thoughtfully. And they said, look, the kids are right. We trained them. Our engineering department trained these kids. Their science is good. This report is accurate. So the mayor, and bless him, still the mayor, Dominic Sarno of Springfield, came out and announced publicly, our city is going to put $156,000 into renovating our city schools this summer because these 9th grade students told us that it will save the environment and save money for the city, and every penny we invest we'll get back within 5 years. Then he came to the school and said to the kids, you better be right. So the kids waited. After 1 year, they were 10th graders. The city saved $80,000 in expenses. After 2 years, the city had saved $160,000 in expenses. So within 2 years, they had already made every penny back. The city was saving money. The mayor came back to the school and said, we just set aside $250,000 for retrofits of other city buildings if you kids will be our energy auditors. Now, those kids did point out after he left that it was kind of slave labor, right? They were getting paid nothing and they were doing professional level work. But they also pointed out that every single one of them was going to go to college and that they could make a lot of money and help the world by doing this. Now, why do you think these kids as 11th graders are still in school when almost half of the kids in their neighborhood have now dropped out of school? Because the work they're doing is important, it's meaningful, it's contributing, it's real work. It's the kind of work they hope to do in the real world. They care about their schoolwork because it connects to something that matters in the world. That's the reason we're getting 100% college acceptance, not because we have some special trick. Because we are busting our butt to make the learning of kids connected to the real world in a way that they can contribute, and we are working together in small teams within our schools to make sure every kid is accountable for that work. I'd like to show you a quick video now. No one has seen this video because it's not even finished. I teach a class at Harvard Graduate School of Education, and for the final project of my class, students are not writing a paper, because who's a paper for anyway? For me to read and grade and hand back? What good does that do the world? Their final project is to create a 5-minute video that can go out and help teachers around the world learn more, and principals around the world learn more about what's great. I have a collection that I spent the last 35 years creating of hundreds and hundreds of examples of beautiful student projects. Mathematical projects, historical projects, artistic projects. I'll give you the URL for it. It's all open source. My Harvard students had to choose one project from that collection and show how that project succeeds in lifting kids and meeting standards at the same time. And create a video about it, because who's going to read their paper? But other people might watch their video. So one of my students last night, Patrick, sent me his video, which is going to debut on Thursday for an audience at Harvard. It's not even the final cut. And I thought, I'm just going to show it today. These next to last cuts are really beautiful. These are not filmmakers, let me tell you. These are students who made these. But Patrick's video is about the school we were just discussing. And it'll give you an inside look into not the project I just shared, but a very similar project.
I'm just proud that I actually was part of the school. Just knowing like all the changes that Renaissance had made in Springfield. We finally have a school in town that changed everything in the city.
Students, this first year at Renaissance was their first time really being asked to do work of high quality for an outside audience.
Project was brought to our attention. We were like, what do they expect us to do with this big pond? Like, we're 15-year-old students. We felt a lot of pressure. They're depending on us to decide if this pond was swimmable or not. It's kind of like empowering, I guess. Like, oh, they're depending on this brand new school, it's its first year. They're depending on us to give them the information that they're looking for.
Each group had a specific section of the pond that we tested. So different groups had different areas of the pond that we were figuring out whether or not the pond was safe to swim, and that was sort of the ultimate type of responsibility that you can give to a group of students.
Told this is important, we're doing this for the community, you guys are responsible, and we're going to present it, and some important people were going to come to this assembly and we were to present it as if it was a real setting. And it was a real setting.
I actually live 5 minutes away from the pond, so I was actually excited to know what were going to be the results, just because as a kid I used to walk around by the area with my mom and always wonder how come that pond was always closed.
It was both the scientific content, because they had to take the state exam at the end of the year, but also as a way to really engage them in the community and to be able to do scientific field work. I felt that that was an important skill that I wanted my students to have. It wasn't just a cool project, it was a cool project based deeply in the standards. We read primary sources, we read secondary sources, we read scientific text. We read the Massachusetts water quality standards and made sense of them. I'm going to read something, I'm going to understand it, I'm going to use that with my field work and my field experiences, and I'm going to make sense out of that and apply it through my writing and show what I know through what I write. And that, to me, is deeply embedded in the Common Core state standards and deeply embedded in what it means to be college and career ready.
It got us ready for the real world, because me personally, I knew that in college deadline was very important, and part of having a career is knowing that someone is going to hold you responsible.
I think that students who are the most ready for college and for careers are students who have a variety of skills that they've learned in high school. And Moon Pond was an example of a project that gave us different skills, whether it's testing water, whether it's writing up the lab reports, editing the lab reports. It gave students different skills that they may not have normally got.
At the end of the day, like, I was proud. I was proud of myself. I was proud of our class as a whole. Like, it came out really great. We presented it to the mayor of Springfield, and everyone was so impressed with it.
During my undergrad, I had to conduct my own study. And I had to go out there and get approval, and then I had to start. So I had to collect data, do a chart just like we did for this project, and then the final goal was to have a final paper and present it to the whole school. So it's very similar.
Our test results in that first year for the Science MCAS, they were significantly higher than the rest of the city. So whereas people thought, like, oh, you know, that crazy school, well, all of a sudden that crazy school was getting good results. I ultimately want my students to believe in themselves and believe in themselves in a myriad of ways. And one of those ways is to believe that they're capable of whatever it is they'd like to do.
Apprenticeship in trades and other pathways, not just as good a choice. Well, you may notice that every time we show these statistics, we say 100% college acceptance. What we have decided is that we are going to force, I'll say this clearly, force every kid to get into college. But not every kid chooses to go. Because for kids who have made another decision, and in this school, for example, some kids choose to go to military service, some kids choose to go right into a trade school or profession because they have a good opportunity. That's terrific. But we don't want them to think that choice was made to them by their income or class or race. We want them to think, I got into college, I chose to be an electrician. I got into college, I chose to go into the military service. Because when they're 27 and they think, you know what, I think I'd like to go to college now, they think, I got in already, I'm college material, I'm no different than anyone who got into college. Now, it's a particularly touchy issue for me because I worked as a carpenter for 25 years and I made more as a carpenter than I did as a teacher. So it's not like I'm putting down trades. My son is a carpenter. But I don't want to have this sort of tiered world where low-income kids get shepherded into trades with no chance of college and other kids seen as you're upper class, so you get to go to college. So that's the thing that we're fighting. Another very good question here was, so where do these projects even come from? Like, it doesn't seem like the kids are all getting creative power over choosing their projects because they're all doing the same project. And the truth is, we don't usually let kids choose their own projects. We build projects based on the content and standards that we have to teach. Then we announce those projects to kids and pull them in, but they end up running them. And when they run them, they end up changing them, elaborating them, deepening them, pulling them to different places because they get in charge of important things. But we don't say, choose anything you want and learn about it. We say, here's the project. And another pushback there was, yeah, what about buy-in? Do all the students buy in right away? Well, I'll tell you, the Loon Pond project that you just saw in this video, which I thought my student Patrick did a beautiful job of creating the vision of that. I'll tell you the part that isn't in that video, which is I went with Aurora, the teacher, to Springfield to the city departments and said, where do you have something that we could do scientifically, testing that would be of use to you? And we met with department after department, and we went to the water department, and they said, well, there's this pond that is polluted, and it's a mess, and we don't actually have the money to test it and figure it out. Would you want to take that on? And we said, perfect. Fit our standards, great. But we want you to come and tell all the ninth graders that that's what they're going to do. We don't want us to tell them. We want them to say, this is a request from the city. So we got these city officials that came. We brought all the ninth graders into the gym, into the auditorium, And these city officials got up and said, we're asking you to save our city. We're asking you to figure out this pond. We're asking you to do this. The city officials left. I thought, perfect. Then I went back to the room with the kids, and they were like, are you out of your effing minds? Like, us? You want us to do this? You are crazy. This was the first year of the school. These were ninth graders who were reading on a third grade level. I mean, these kids were like, you don't know who we are. We don't even like school. Like, we're not responsible kids. Like, why are you asking us to even do this? They were not bought in at first. And in fact, when we first went to the pond, for the first couple of days, we just pulled out shopping carts and couches and stuff. I mean, we were cleaning it up, working together. They weren't doing any science at first. They were working as a team, buying in to sort of help each other. But gradually, as they learned scientific stuff, they thought, God, this is kind of cool. Like, they're serious. They actually are going to let us use scientific equipment. They're actually going to think we're adults. And over the course of a few weeks, these kids bought into this new role. They trust us to be scientists. The first data they collected were totally invalid, just to let you know. They didn't standardize anything. They didn't pay attention to the standards we set. But then when they didn't succeed at that, their research teams got all angry at each other and said, let's get our acts together, for goodness sake. Let's get ourselves standardized. Let's get some good protocols here. And they started collecting data that were valid. So it wasn't easy. A movie with a soundtrack makes it all sound great. I was in the middle of it. It was a mess. It was a total mess at first. But it ended up, being this thing that sort of changed them along the way. So who else has questions or push?
In terms of the curriculum that's set by the state, it seems to me that in the U.S. that's more flexible. In Ontario, the curriculum we have is very rigid, and the ministry mandates what has to be taught. So how would we overcome something like that if the school were to pursue this type of model?
Great. So the question is, it looks like there's flexibility in the curriculum in the States, but here in Ontario, there's a very clear curriculum that you have to follow, so how could you do this? I actually am not going to be able to answer that very well because I don't know your curriculum well. In the US, there's very clear standards, student outcomes, that every student has to meet at every grade level, but there's not always an exact curriculum they have to follow, although certain districts adopt a curriculum that they have to follow. So everywhere I go in the States, I'm negotiating for more wiggle room. I'm always pushing to say, if we meet the same standards and do well on the same tests, you got to give us a little space to do things differently. So for me, it's a continual battle. Although, to be honest, it's the principals that I work with who are fighting that battle, and I'm just supporting them.
How do you get the majority of your staff on board?
Great. How do you get the majority of your staff on board to do this? I will tell you, this is going to sound like a total cop-out answer. We don't partner with schools if the staff doesn't want us to. So we spend and I'm not trying to recruit you because we're not going to work here with you. But I will tell you, when we decide to partner with a school, we spend an entire year of courtship with them before we decide to get married, right? So they come to our institutes, they visit our schools, they see what's working, they see what they like and don't like. We visit them, we meet with the faculty, and we ask the faculty in many different ways, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to try it? And if 80 or 90% of them don't say, yes, we really want to do this, we don't partner with them because we learned the hard way that we can't force teachers to do anything they don't want to do.
So it will work with critical mass then?
Yes, we never expect 100%. There's always going to be some disgruntled teachers. There's often even some toxic teachers, just to be clear. And I've been a teacher all my life, so I'm not trying to be disparaging, but I spend a lot of time counseling principals about how to get those toxic teachers out of the building. So I do. I'm just being honest. You have a faculty of 70, there's going to be some jerks. It's just the way life is. And part of my job is to figure out how we can get them out. And with unions in the States, it's very hard. So we've got to figure out how do we get a few toxic teachers out so everyone else can support each other. Yeah?
Is it a charter school?
So we work with 165 schools 2/3 of them are public district schools, and 1/3 of them are public charter schools. The school that we were just looking at as an example is a district school. It's not a charter. It's subject to all the same district rules and guidelines.
What does an average day look like? I spend a lot of time on learning and science.
Yeah.
Is there time, or is it very like free-flowing type of period?
Great. So what does an average day look like? It's a very different answer for high school, which is what I'll speak to now, than what I would say tomorrow where I'm working with elementary folks. So the high school periods are going to look a lot like any old high school, with the exception that few of our schools have 42-minute periods. Just to be clear, most of them have 60 to 75-minute periods. Okay? 75. So similar to yours. The difference is when the history teacher knows that they're going to have to go out into the community to interview civil rights heroes, she negotiates with her team, her grade level team, to say, I need your periods that day. I need your kids not to go to math, not to go to English language arts for 2 days in a row because we're going to be out interviewing people. And in return, you get some of my time. So they won't go to my class the next 2 days. They'll go to your class double periods. They work together as grade level teams to be flexible with each other. But other than that, it looks like a pretty standard schedule.
But that means to me that all students go from the same period to the next period and travel as
Oh, good question. So are they traveling as a cohort? Not necessarily. And so there's a lot of negotiation and pulling and pushing to make that work. It takes a faculty that are willing to collaborate. We try to make our high schools operate more like our middle schools, which is not in isolation, but teachers feeling like they're on a team that work together. So we have departments, but we also have grade level teams, and those grade level teams have to collaborate and work together.
Is it a semester school like ours is?
Great. Is it semestered? Because we work in 40 different districts, it's different everywhere. Some are semestered, some are trimester, some are quarter.
So with the grade 9s who are doing science, let's say first semester, and then the grade 9s doing science second semester do the same project.
Great. So with the grade 9s doing science in the first semester and the grade 9s doing science second semester do the same project, probably we would not set it up that way. Probably we would have all grade 9s doing science together in the first semester, if that makes sense, so that they're all involved in the project. Although a project like this is also not just science, to be honest. Like the language arts teacher had to do a lot because to start with, these kids had to read scientific documents and they couldn't read any of it. So, and the data analysis here was supported by the math teacher. So there was a lot of collaboration. Yes?
Just out of curiosity, what's the average size of one of these high schools?
Great. So average size of these high schools. So right now I'll just tell you, we don't work with really big high schools. Not unless they're split into academies. So the high school I attended as a kid was 2,700 kids. We don't work with any schools like that. This school is 700, the one you just saw. And we can deal with that. But we can't deal with 3,000. So we want to keep it small enough so every kid is known and the teachers can actually meet together. And if we come into a school that's got 2,000 and they want to work with us, they've got to split themselves into academies so that the faculty can actually work together. Okay, I will move on a little bit. To say a few more slides. The only way our work is measured in the States is this, test scores. It's the only way. Even though I would love it if they cared about the beautiful work that we have, it's not. It's really just test scores. And fortunately, our test scores are way above the rest of the district, in every district we work. So if they weren't way above, we would be in trouble. The reason I just point that out is not because I care about tests deeply, but because people think you have to make a choice. You either do great, beautiful, deep work, or you do well on tests, which is a ridiculous choice to make. The reason our students are doing better on tests is because they're doing work that matters to them. An independent study said a kid in one of our schools after 3 years gains almost a whole year of extra learning on tests. Okay, I just wanted to throw in a little personal touch since some of you have my book here. I wanted to give you some visual images. Even though I work in city schools all the time now, I don't live in the city. I live in the middle of nowhere. So I live in a town that has no street lights. Most of the roads are not paved. There's only 7 buildings in my town. There is a church. There is the post office, which is Mary Dillman's home. You've got to go into her home to get your mail. I taught Mary Dillman's kids. I taught Mary Dillman's grandkids. Anyone who lives in my town under the age of 50 is a former student. Right? The volunteer fire department, the part-time policeman. There's the town hall, which is a 2-room building. There's the Shutesbury Athletic Club. This is the only business in town. There are no elliptical trainers in this building. There are no weights. This is a bar. It is surrounded by pickup trucks for half the year and snowmobiles the other half of the year. And it is the only business in town. And then there's a school. This is a real small town world. One of the beauties of living in a small town is that there's no government, right? There's no mayor. There's not we sit in a room like this and argue at a town meeting every year to make decisions. That's the way we make decisions in our town. It's pure democracy. It's a mess. But a beauty of living in a place with no government is that nobody got hired to do the things that in other towns and cities adults do, so we just had kids do them in my school where I was for 25 years. So, for example, when the state of Massachusetts asked every city and town to do an amphibian census to figure out what amphibians live in that town, most towns hired a herpetologist or a naturalist. We used 3rd and 4th graders. So we had 38 3rd and 4th graders going out during school, after school, and on weekends to collect amphibians. They collected larval amphibians, so they became expert at being able to identify every amphibian in its larval stage. And they collected adult amphibians. And they measured them, and they weighed them, and they photographed them, and they cataloged them. And they became true experts in the amphibians in our town. When they sent their report to the state of Massachusetts, they got a response. Thank you, 3rd and 4th grade herpetologists. Your data set was the biggest data set we got from any town in the state of Massachusetts. Now, it wasn't a fair fight. We had 38. They had 1 person, right, in their town. They worked for 2 or 3 days of sampling. These kids spent every minute outside of school doing nothing but collecting amphibians. But the letter also said, but you made some mistakes in your data. We just need to let you know. 2 of the species you identified as local are not actually local to your area. And the kids were incensed. So they first had to learn how to write a polite rebuttal. Dear State of Massachusetts, thank you for your affirmation of our data set. We respectfully disagree with your critique of our findings. We believe we correctly identified those 2 species. Here are our data, here are our measurements, here are our photographs, and we would like to meet with you in person. The state sent out a herpetologist, met with the students. The students brought him through the woods, showed him what they found, and you know who was right. When the students showed the herpetologist that they actually knew more about their town than anyone in the state, they said after he left, you know, Mr. Berger, we're not just practicing to be scientists, we kind of are scientists. I thought, you certainly are already scientists. They also were part of a service project to protect their favorite amphibian, the spotted salamander. These are about 6 inches long. They live in our town, and on rainy spring nights, they have to migrate down to vernal pools to lay eggs and mate. Unfortunately, they get run over by cars and pickup trucks. So we tried to protect them by setting up vigils on rainy nights where the kids and I and other teachers would stay up with flashlights, and we would stop traffic, and we would carry them across the road all night long. And it was a really good service. in a great sort of Catholic service way, but we were tired the next day, you know. So the kids were a part of the construction of the world's first salamander tunnels. And now those salamanders actually go underground under the dirt road. They are shepherded through these giant drift fences in the woods that are like cattle fences, except they're only 3 inches tall, that shepherds them in a V down to these tunnels, and they come out on the other side safely to mate. This is 1 mile from my house, and there's now a local bluegrass band named Salamander Crossing where I live. Well, when those kids were done, they realized we need a field guide to amphibians in our town because there isn't one, because nobody knows what's in our town except us. So these kids researched and created a field guide to amphibians in their town. I brought that field guide with me to a middle school in Portland, Maine, and those kids said, all right, we'll create a field guide to the bay next to Portland, Maine, Casco Bay. And it became sold in tourist shops and also sold by the U.S. Park Service to raise money to save the bay. This school is a school that's a refugee settlement school. It's actually Catholic Refugee Services in Portland that does this. So more than a third of the kids in this school come from Sudan and Somalia, Eritrea, and those kids were part of this same project. Even though they were English as a second language learners, they were not kept away from the important project of creating a field guide to what lived in that bay. Every single 7th grader created a page about whatever species they were doing. Now imagine if you were a 7th grader, whether you were born in Portland or whether you were born in Somalia, and you brought your parents or your foster parents into a store and said, this is our book. This is the book we wrote. This is my page. This is the page I wrote. Nothing I did in all of my years of schooling is something I have today to show you. These kids already in 7th grade had something they were that proud of. And no kid was allowed to draw a jellyfish by looking at it online and drawing it, copying it, because that's not the way scientists work. These kids had to go down to the bay. We borrow wetsuits and underwater cameras, and they actually photographed these things underwater. They were screaming, they were yelling, but they were learning being a scientist is kind of cool. It's really exciting. Then I took their field guide to the lowest performing middle school in the state, and those kids created a field guide as a literacy project to the bog behind their school. I brought it to a preschool in Washington, D.C., where students created a guide to the park down the street from their school. They worked with a local arborist, and even though their spelling isn't perfect yet, all their tree identification was exact. And I brought this field guide to a high school, High Tech High in San Diego, California, and those students created a professional level field guide, forward by Jane Goodall, selling for $25, 10,000 print run. It is the definitive field guide to San Diego Bay, sells tens of thousands of copies. All of the proceeds go back to the school. This book is indistinguishable from an adult field guide, even though it's entirely written, researched, photographed, laid out, and produced by high school kids. So if you want a field guide to San Diego Bay, you've got to buy high school kid work. All of the work I'm showing you today is open source. It's all held on this URL, which is also on a handout that's around today if you need it. You are welcome at any point to download any of that work, use it in any way that's useful to you, and I'll be shameless here, in your high schools, if your students are doing project work that you're proud of, I sure hope you go to the Center for Student Work and submit it. Because the reason we have beautiful project work from around the country to share is that people are generous with sharing their project work because they'd like to help other teachers. This is all nonprofit. It's all open source sharing. So if you have great project work that you want to share, please do reach out to us and submit examples. I will tell you that not everything submitted gets uploaded. It's a curated site. Harvard students look at every submission and decide what's the level of project we want to upload. But if you have great student writing or great student project work in any discipline, please consider sending it to us. And if not, just use the work on here in any way you can. at the Center for Student Work. I do get to see you at the end of the day, so I'll take lots more questions then and have more things to share with you, but I don't want to run over because I know we've got great workshops coming up in 15 minutes and we have a break. So I'm here all day. Push me in any way with any hard questions. Thanks very much.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Sorry, Ron. We meant to thank you. We're going to thank you at the end of the day. We're debating whether to thank you twice. All right. Hi, folks. There we go. We're already a buzz. Back at the reunion. So yeah. So first of all, we're debating: should we thank Ron twice? We'll thank him now, and then it would be okay if we thanked him now. Okay. So thank you, Ron. All right. I have to tell people this very short story, and I know we've gone to get great things. But when I was in grade 2, I went to Huntsville Public School. Disclaimer: no Catholics in Huntsville except the Keys family, so there was no Catholic school. So at Huntsville Public School, my teacher said in grade 2. We were learning about frogs, and she was talking about these frogs. So I, on my own, and my friend Peter and I went down to the river, down into the swamp, and came up with our frogs' eggs, brought them to school. By the way, no supervision, didn't tell our moms or dads we were going. We just went down with our boots on, came back, and we watched those frogs, that jelly turn into tadpoles. We discovered the tadpoles were eating one another too, by the way. That was a part of our learning. And then, of course, they became frogs. So, which is all to say that this is wonderful. This concept of project learning, and I think the work you brought to us today. It's that stuff that touches you the heart, whether you're in grade 1 or in grade 12, or God knows if you're 55 years old and a beleaguered superintendent. So all those things I think are really good. Right now, to continue our adventure learning, by the way, if you will, our expeditionary learning, if we'll call it today. Well, I have Jan Murphy to give you some insight. What we've done, though, today, by the way, is we brought real students, real teachers, some students as young as 6 years of age, to share and talk about their learning. I also happen to know, as I look around the room, we've got lots of folks who are doing this kind of work, and I think this is the day, hopefully, we can create that inspiration and that uplift and that practical things that we can take back to our schools. So with no further ado, I turn it over to the nice lady in the red jacket, Jan Murphy. All right.
Thanks. Thanks, Patrick. I just never know whether they're going to talk about frogs or turtles, and those of you know Patrick know the turtle story. So, with no further ado, we are going to take a break, but after the break, just to let you know how the day is set up, and if you haven't selected where you're going to go, just a quick recap where everything is. So we're going to break for 15 minutes. Aideen Moss will be in this room. This is the TELUS room. And then if you go out the door here to your left, there are the washrooms, immediately they're male, female, and then there's a staircase to the basement, or the lower level. And in there we have the Gemini West and the Gemini East room. Sabrina is in the Gemini West, and Jillian is in the Gemini East. The Gemini East is at capacity for those who have already registered and selected that. So if you haven't selected an area, that is full. The carousel sections, they're going to take place directly out this door, if you keep going straight, in the area that is surrounded by the black drapes. So the carousel sections, we have 5 carousel sections, and you're free to go into the mezzanine area and go to each of those, and that is where you'll be meeting some of our students for the day. Immediately following that, we'll be having lunch, so we'll gather at 11:45 for grace, and then lunch. So if you're not sure, please consult the first page, and we'll meet you back here at 11:45. So enjoy the next section of your morning. Thank you.
So first of all, I just very much like to thank all the presenters we've had in the seminars and such that we've had today. Very much rooted in classrooms, very much rooted in your practice as teachers. And, you know, as they say, having real live students, some as young as 6 years of age, I think, added a different sense to what we witnessed today. and with our focus on this question of real-world problem solving or whatever it is, activity-based learning, I think is kind of key. So what we'd like to do is actually call Ron up again now to kind of, he's, by the way, traveled around and listened to many of the seminars, listened to some of your work, and so we'll have a bit of a dialogue about what he's witnessed and what, frankly, you've witnessed as well today. So, Ron, with no further ado, are you wired for sound?
So
great. And by the way, when we're concluded this, we'll finish with a prayer and then have a beautiful day. There we go.
Great, thank you. I'm only sorry I was not able to simultaneously be at all the presentations today. The ones I went to were really inspiring. Lots of things that I thought that I should have been sharing this morning as great examples of work. The first thing that struck me was how humbling it is to speak in the morning and then spend the day talking with people about your own lives and see how hard it is to translate sometimes what I'm saying to your settings. So the first thing I wanted to say was, wanted to make some connections to when teachers that I talked with and school leaders that I talked with over the course of from the morning till now said, yeah, but. And there were some real differences. So first let me hit some trickier ones. So I made some comments this morning about toxic teachers. Some people were offended. I'll let you know, having been a teachers union member myself for almost 30 years, I'm very far from being anti-union. But I do have to say, for school leaders in the room or district leaders in the room, not every teacher is great in our schools, and one of our jobs in leading them is to figure out how to counsel people who aren't great out. So I'm sorry if I didn't mean to be I didn't mean to give any sense of lack of solidarity with teachers. I've been a teacher most of my life and a union teacher, almost all of my life. But that doesn't mean that I'm not really critical when I go into one of our schools and I see weak teaching. And some of it can be counseled and supported, and some of it, they're in the wrong profession right now, just to be honest. So sorry to sound cold on that. Another thing which was actually a challenge for me, was when someone brought up the issue of what you called streams, or what we would call tracks in the US. And they said, well, how do you respond to that? We have streams, a vocational stream, a college stream, and that was one where I didn't have a middle ground. There wasn't really anything I could say that was going to go over well with you. I'm really opposed to it. So I'm awfully sorry to make your lives tricky in both translating and in pushing against something that maybe many of you feel a really important role for. But I am adamantly opposed to tracks, which you will call streams, because I feel like it sets some kids up for we don't believe in you early on. So again, all I can say is I'm not someone who believes that college is the right ending place for every kid. I'm someone who really believes in physical craftsmanship and working with your hands in trades and professions. But I don't want to pick the kid when they're young and say, I don't believe you can do this. I would wish every kid would be involved in both working with hands and mind from early on. So again, sorry, some of these I can easily see a quick middle ground and way to connect on. That one, that's a hard one. The schools we work with, we don't work with a school that tracks. I'll just tell you. If they have a rigid tracking system, we won't work with them. We will work with schools that do grouping for periods of time, especially to support kids who are struggling. But that's different than a permanent track, or stream, as you would call it. So again, I'm going to be controversial here in a way that it's all I can just say. Where you go with that is your choice, and I'm not saying you can't work around whatever you were, but if I were your partner, I'd be pushing on that issue for you. Another issue that came up that I can address that's very much the same is the issue of coverage. So lots of people I spoke with today said, yeah, we can't go deep all the time on the projects that you talked about because we have so much to cover. And that's one I can totally relate to, because there's nobody in the US that would not feel full solidarity with you on that issue. As I said, our schools are measured by one thing, and that's their test scores and college acceptances and graduation rates. They are not measured by the quality of their projects, even though I love the quality of their work and the quality of their character. That's not how our schools are measured. So the pressure for teachers to cover to get kids ready for exams is the same in the US or worse than what you deal with. So let me address that quickly, just to say, of course there's a need for coverage. All of us in schools are required to cover content. But here's a few things we need to be aware of. Since we were in school and now, it's a different world. Everything we memorized in school, you can get on your phone in 1 second. Everything. Everything we memorized, you can get on your phone in 1 second, and every kid in your class can as well. It takes away a little bit of the pressure on memorization and filling kids' heads with content when they can get it that quickly. Now, that doesn't mean you don't need to give them the frameworks for how to judge what they get, to know how to get it, to know how to evaluate content and data, to know how to make use of it, to have timelines and constructs to understand science and history. Of course they need that. But I'll tell you, I spent 95% of my younger years memorizing things that they're of no use to me now, and I can get them very quickly. The second thing I would say about content is that we need to toggle back and forth between being in survey mode and being in case study mode. So some of the time we have to cover a lot of science, a lot of history, a lot of ELA content, a lot of math content, and some of the times we have to stop and go deep so kids fundamentally understand history, fundamentally understand science or math. We have to get off that treadmill. So it's not an either or. Of course, we have to be in survey mode some of the time. Here's a story that I often use to address that question. It's a metaphor. True story from my life. My father worked in the same chemical plant for 46 years. These days, there's almost probably not a single one of your students will work the same job for 46 years. It's a different era. But you know the era I'm talking about, the era of your parents, your grandparents, where you work in the same job because you're going to get a pension. And you stay in that job because you've got a good job. My father stayed in the same chemical plant for 46 years, and his vision was someday he'll retire, he'll get a good pension, and he and my mother will travel the world. He retired at age 68, and he died at age 69. But he had 1 year where he had a great pension. And he and my mother traveled the world, and it was the best year of their lives. Absolutely the best year of their lives. They had a terrific year. And that year he called me up, and he said, you have to come see our pictures of Europe. We took a trip to Europe. So I drove to their house in my pickup truck, and this was before iPads and internet. This was like photos when he said pictures. He didn't mean on my screen. He meant physical printed photos. And I got to their house, and there was no place to eat because the dining room table was all photos, and the kitchen table was all photos. And I started looking at their photos, and only then did I understand that they had bought a package tour of Europe of 14 countries in 12 days. So when I looked at the photos, almost every photo was from the train window. And you could see the frame of the window. And then through the frame, you'd see this blurry castle or this blurry city, And they were so excited, and then they argued about what it was of, what country it was taken in. Like, that was Italy. No, it was Switzerland. Maybe it was Germany. And I realized if you had given them an assessment about Europe after that, it wouldn't have done so well. Even though they did have a great time. And I had this epiphany at that moment that was like my entire pre-K through, I didn't go to pre-K, K through 12 education was on that train with content going by the windows that fast. Dates, formulas, just names, things I've memorized. And I thought, what if they had still seen a lot of Europe? What if they'd seen 6 countries or 8 countries, but they had stopped in Italy for 3 days and gotten off the train and gone to the Uffizi Gallery in Firenze, you know, and had a great Italian meal and met Italian people and seen the artwork, and they would have come back and said, oh my God, Italy is the most amazing place in the world. The people are so different, the art is so beautiful, the food is so great. Like, we can't wait to go back to Italy. We learned so much about what a different country can be. And they didn't have that experience because that train never stopped in Italy for 3 days. And so I thought, couldn't we stop the train we're on in our classrooms for a few days in one place and learn about something well? You know, and I just came from a presentation by Eliana and Anna, who did this geography inquiry-based look at a local neighborhood where, and you think, there's a lot of geography standards you're supposed to cover, but they dug into what is a changing neighborhood look like, what's going on there, and let the kids do original research there, something they will never forget. And it doesn't matter what subject you're in. One of the things that blew by the window when I was on that train was the quadratic formula. Maybe you used it. I did really well in math. I have no idea how the quadratic formula was derived or what it means. I just knew how to plug it in and get an answer. But if we had stopped that train in quadratic formula land for 3 days and actually thought about, what is that formula? Where did it come from? How was it derived? How could you get there otherwise? What does it mean? I might today really have a clear understanding of it. And I went right by it to calculus. I went right beyond it to college math. And then I think back and I think, did I ever understand it? No. Because we didn't get off the train long enough for me to ever understand it. So yes, we have to cover a lot. But I also think, where in your ride can you let your students get off and become experts in something, learn something deeply, get a sense of one culture, one historical moment, one war, one formula, so they really understand what math, what history is. I wouldn't tell you where to do that, but to do it sometime. The last thing I'll say, and then I want to show some video, is that I went to a tremendous presentation by these two gentlemen, Ellie and Anthony, about, from Carmen's school, about how they're celebrating great student work, how they're having students produce things that they care about and value and giving them an online forum to share that. And one of the things that a lot of people said to me is, we can't do those kind of grand projects that you're showing. And I think I gave the wrong message this morning. It's not about the scope of the project. It's about giving kids a voice to do original work that they're proud of, even if it's a small piece of work. To have them be able to share something they've done that's original, that they feel like they did this, it's their work, it's powerful. They weren't just following us. So whether that's a single essay or a poem or a piece of work that they published, the thing I'm most known for is this Austin's butterfly, which is just a kid's drawing of a butterfly. It's not a giant project, but it's well done. And so having kids have that opportunity to do something well, I think, is what matters. The school that I talked about this morning, Springfield Renaissance School, did really well on their science test, which was high stakes for the school. But what they studied was the macroinvertebrates and water quality of Loon Pond. You know, on a science test how few questions are going to be about that particular topic. That science test is going to be one of those really broad tests about astronomy, about genetics, about evolution, about all these different issues. How are you ever going to have kids study for that? The kids did well on that test because the project gave them a different sense of self. Because when they knew the test was coming up, they formed study groups and they studied their butts off to do well on that test. So I'm not thinking that the project itself will give your kids all the skills and content they need to do well on every test. What it can do is change their self-image of who they are as a student. So when the big test is coming up, like people who sat with me and said, I teach AP. The AP test is everything. I think, yeah, let your kids go deep sometimes so that when you really dive into your study groups to get ready for that AP test, they have a whole different level of motivation. Some of the time, tests are reality. You got to get ready for them. So absolutely, the project isn't going to give you all the materials. It will give you the inspiration to do this. I'd like to show a few quick videos. Again, The first one I want to show is I'm a big fan of this push to have kids verbally present themselves in order to show that they've shown evidence that they've achieved. There's two structures that I suggest in our EL book called Leaders of Their Own Learning. One is student-led conferences, which are here called parent interviews or parent-teacher interviews. We do those in the States, but in the States it's kind of weird because after elementary school they don't happen. They only happen at elementary level. At middle and high schools they don't happen. But at elementary schools they happen, but kids are not involved. So when I was a kid, my mother would come in, never my father, and she'd go to school after school, and I had no idea what she was going to talk about. And there were only two possible outcomes. Either I was in trouble or I was okay. And then she'd come home and it was like, I'm not in trouble. That's it. Whereas, by contrast, the students in our schools have to formally present evidence that they've met their learning goals in every subject to their parents every year, multiple times per year, K through 12. In addition, at every transition year, they have to formally present to a panel of people beyond their parents. So transition years for us is elementary to middle, middle to high, and then we have this strange 10th to 11th one, where the first 2 years of high school we consider getting adjusted, learning how to be a high school kid, less of a knucklehead. And after that, the next 2 years are about getting ready for life in college. So we have a passage in between those two. And we use the word passage because it's like a confirmation, a bar mitzvah, a quinceanera. It's like a passage in your life that people come to see you step up. So some of you may have seen, I'll show you a video of what passages look like for 10th graders or 12th graders in our school. Before I do, just to say where these resources are, if you end up on our website, all the free open stuff we have is right there. So our videos, the videos I'm showing you are all there. And then there's this link to the Center for Student Work. If you click on the Center for Student Work, it brings you there. And when you get to the center, you can choose between projects. When you go to projects, there's K-12 projects that you can access. You can download them. They're mapped to standards. They're contextualized. And there's, 400 projects up there right now. We hope that people in this room will contribute another bunch for us. And then there's a whole section of writing, high-quality student writing from all disciplines that you can access as well, so that when we talk with students about quality, we're looking at models of work. Okay, this video is about passage presentations. It's about kids in our school who have to present formally to a panel to say, I'm ready for 11th grade, or I'm ready to graduate.
Hello, everyone. I would like to thank you all for coming to my passage. This whole entire presentation is to prove to everyone that is here that I am ready for 11th grade, and I am.
In many schools with student-engaged assessment practices, students reflect upon and communicate the scope of their learning and growth at the end of pivotal transition grades through passage presentations. Students present before members of their community. Teachers prepare students for success by providing organizers and rubrics and dedicating school time for preparing. Students share portfolios of work as evidence, and the presentations reflect both academic and personal growth.
Society does kind of like, you could say, trash on Puerto Ricans. My motive is like proving the world wrong. I can be Puerto Rican, I can be a young woman and still go off to college, be a business manager or anything like that and do what I want to do because I worked for it.
Though passage presentations share these universal qualities, passages take on unique characteristics in every school. At Mapleton Expeditionary School of the Arts, known as MESA, passage presentations are held at the end of grades 8, 10, and 12. Students must pass passages to move on. The passage presentation panel includes at least one teacher and one community member. Students speak to character, academic challenges, and growth. And as an art school, student work is emphasized in the passage presentations.
My name is Simone Ruferto, and I just got done doing my 12th grade passage portfolio, and I almost passed.
I
actually have really high expectations for myself in art. So I know myself pretty well as a learner in the fact that I know that I actually need to see things in order to be able to grasp the concept of what we're learning. I've learned this through myself as well as through Mesa, considering it's an expeditionary school of learning through the arts. For my exemplary reflection, I chose my pop art intensive based off of Andy Warhol's block prints that he did of Maryland. Passages are a good idea for kids to do because I feel like when you can actually present your work like that, then you're really ready to go out into the world to be able to present yourself. This is my senior expedition for horror makeup. And this is my friend Santana who let me dress her up as a zombie. I knew I wasn't going to pass right away because of the edits I needed to make to my senior expedition.
So when you're almost there, it looks like, but you're not quite, right? So let's look at what you...
And I feel like since I didn't pass them the first time, I can really just push myself that much harder to get them done.
I'm going to schedule you Tuesday, May 8th.
Okay.
At 3:30.
Okay.
At Tapestry Charter High School in Buffalo, New York, passage presentations are held at the end of grades 10 and 12. Students must pass passages. Students discuss their academic strengths and challenges, a significant learning expedition, and their academic goals. Community members play significant roles on the passage presentation panels.
Hi, my name is Dennis King, and my academic strength is geometry, math period.
I'm Tom Reaming. I'm a faculty member at the University of Buffalo. This is the second year that I've had the opportunity to serve as a panelist for students going through the Passages portfolio process. Just in terms of honors, what's the content, and more importantly, what are the expectations? What are you expecting
Honors
to do?
is like a higher class. It's a more challenging class. We were doing a project about genetically engineered fish.
So when the actual presentation takes place, the role of the crew leader is to make sure that the panel is informed, that they have the materials that they need, including rubric and understanding as to what the students are about to do.
The portfolio process, I think, gives the panelists an opportunity to provide positive feedback and encouragement.
I'm really happy to see your growth and your maturing, and I think you have great leadership potential, and I want to see more of that.
I would just encourage you to take the opportunities that are available here to become as well-rounded as you possibly can. While I offered, I think, maybe some constructive criticism, I also tried to really congratulate him on how far he's come as a student over the last 2 years. And in addition, gave him some suggestions about things that he might want to think about moving forward. You actually don't prioritize things in your head, but on Sunday you look at the week coming up.
It's really about understanding that there are supports there for you. The support structure from your crew leaders, from your classmates, from your teachers, and especially from the community members that have a chance to be on these panels.
At Casco Bay High School in Portland, Maine, senior passage presentations are called Final Word. Unlike 10th grade passage presentations at Casco Bay, Final Word presentations are not evaluated. Students craft narratives of significant personal growth and present their final word to parents, teachers, and their entire graduating class.
For us, Final Word is about giving seniors a chance on the verge of this big life transition to say who they are and what they're about, and to reflect on where they've been and where they want to go, and to give a chance for the community also to express their adoration for each kid on the verge of this great life moment.
I grew up in Rwanda till I was 14, then came here to America and started my junior year here at Casco Bay High School.
A lot of things have changed since my freshman year. I've overcome so many difficulties and challenging events during the past 4 years.
The main thing I wanted people to get out of my final word was, even though I was still new in the country, that didn't mean that my goal or my vision or my dream was ended.
I'll never forget where I come from, because my past shapes who I am today. My goal is to be a pharmacist, and my dream is to be helpful to those who are suffering and share my success, especially with those who never had the same opportunity that I've had.
Not until I started writing my final word that I realized that I actually went through a lot. That gave me a chance to actually think and know where I'm at and where I'm going and where I came from.
But what I've gained from this experience is confidence. I'm ready. I'm ready because I know my people are ready to rise when I rise.
Okay, if you could take just a couple of minutes at your table, any connections, questions that come up, either one.
Where am I going? What are my opportunities? And what plans do I have next? Well, I just came from a session. My name's Mark Harper. I just came from a session on this, and we were talking about creating pathways to success in the same ways we talked about teacher advisory. Great idea. How are we going to pull this off? And without a vision of what it can look like, and why it's so valuable, it's easy to get caught, up in the logistics, which we have to do. We have to do the logistics. Like I'm just thinking, if I looked at that and I think about giving the opportunity for every student, how would I create that form? How would I bring people to do that? But that's not really, that's an important thing. It's not the important thing. Here's the issue. Well, but those are the things we go to. And
Yeah. Okay, I want to pull us back together for a moment. Is there anybody willing to share with the whole group a connection or a question that came up for you around having students be compelled to formally present evidence of who they are and how they're doing? So let me say that again. Anyone want to share a connection or a question that came up for you around different structures of having students own their assessment, have to sort of show evidence of where they are? Yes? Yes. Great. So the question is, it sort of seems like a good structure, but in one of these schools, the final word was not evaluate. So what's going to motivate students to do this? Well, at that school, the pressure of giving a formal presentation to all of your classmates and family members, and sometimes their family members, is high pressure, actually, for them. I don't know about you, but I didn't get up and give a speech to my entire graduating class and have my parents in the audience and my priest in the audience and my soccer coach in the audience. And, you know, like, that's high stakes in a different way. So even though it's not graded, I think in some way the pressure on that one is the greatest. The kids really worry about their final word, about what they're going to say, and are they going to give the right message to the people that they care most about. So I've never attended a final word where people weren't crying. It's just very emotional. So it's, yes?
I like the idea that and I saw it earlier in some of the videos in the morning, the ability to take criticism, the ability to take that and not personalize it. I think as adults we do an awful job of that. We're not capable of doing it very, very well. I mean, I think the ones who are very successful are people who can do that. But if kids can learn how to do that, and I think you saw that at the beginning when the kids were talking about how to improve the drawing of the snake.
Right.
That's an incredible tool to be able to get that.
Well, thank you. And that topic of giving critique carefully is something we focus on all the time, K to 12. I mean, we use this kind, specific, helpful vision for critique, and we have critique sessions continually. And the critique is about the quality of their math, it's about the quality of their character and behavior, it's about the decisions they're making, and it happens. We have a strange structure in our high schools, which we call crew. It's like an advisory structure. Every day, kids sit together for 30 or 40 minutes, which I know is a big chunk of time out of the day, which we always make happen. And in that small circle, with one adult, one crew leader, could be the principal, could be the counselor, could be the math teacher, that crew leader has that same group of 12 to 15 kids for 4 years to keep an eye on. And that every morning session is like a critique session. Kids talk about how they're doing in their classes, they talk about how they're doing with each other, and they get critique from each other about are they being their best selves. So there's a practice every day on giving critique thoughtfully and getting critique thoughtfully. Great. Any other things you noticed or questions that came up?
Just the notion of kids taking control of their own learning. And I always felt as a teacher, when we had parent interviews, and I know all my colleagues that I worked with in schools, we were the ones on the hot seat. It was
right.
The justification for the assessments that we provided, how that child was doing. It was us answering those back and forth questions about our job. And I felt as a professional a little uncomfortable about the notion that I was on the hot seat. So I would always have the children come in and be there, but this is really flipping the whole notion of who's responsible for the learning. And if that child can take ownership of their learning, then I think that's the end goal of what we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
That was really neat seeing that in the childhood descriptions.
Great. And having kids feel like they have to be the one to explain is a really big shift. I'm actually going to use that as a segue to show you 2 minutes of a student-led conference. Because student-led conferences is a whole different structure. The example I'll give you is from another one of our schools that is one of these. Whoops. Sorry about that. It's from another one of our schools that is 100% college bound. This is the school that President Obama was speaking about when he pointed to Stephen in the audience and said, this boy came here without English and now is going to college. This is a school, every kid goes to college. But this is a really great example of a good challenge. So every single kid in this school is low income, and every single kid has Spanish-speaking parents. And about 2/3 of the parents don't speak enough English to do this well. So you'd think, how do you even have this process when you have that kind of a challenging setting? And yet, more than twice a year in every grade level, 100% of parents come in to hear their kids present. And we have to use students as translators because we don't have enough adults who are bilingual to do this process, and yet it happens all the time. I'll show you 2 minutes of Gabrielle presenting. Her father does speak quite good English because otherwise it would have been challenging for me to show it to you. But you can see Gabrielle, sort of her composure about how to explain to her father what she's doing.
Ms. Carmen, this is my father.
Hi, nice to meet you.
My pleasure. This is my portfolio. I'm gonna tell you about how well I'm doing. I just had my student-led conference with my dad. We were talking about how good I'm doing, all my LTs I'm working on, my progress, and everything I'm doing good in my classes.
Are there any that you're really proud of?
I'm really proud of explaining what content clues are because it's really simple, and I think
it is very important to have these conferences, especially to learn and to see where our students stand as far as academic is concerned. And it also helps us get involved in the education of our kids.
This is my content clues quiz. See, these are the learning targets I can define vocabulary words. And
I'm Gabrielle, the science teacher. I'm also her crew leader. I really appreciate student-led conferences because it increases participation greatly. Our school has 100% participation in student-led conferences, which is great for every single student to be able to have a conversation with their parents or their family member and their teacher about their progress.
I can apply self-selected vocabulary words to my writing. See, I've been really good. I only missed one question for defining content clues, but either way, I'm really good at that.
Okay, just wanted to give you a sense of what that looks like. And that's going on in all of our schools, K through 12, of having the kids are responsible. Have I met my learning targets in math, in ELA, in science? Do I have evidence I can show my parents that that's the case? Which is a great way to also get your parents in to sort of see what kids are doing. Questions from that? Yes, please.
Well, how well does it go over when a student has not really met many of the targets and he's sitting there or she's sitting there with parents and crew leader? How does that go?
Great. So the question is, what about if the kid hasn't met her targets or his targets? How does that go? Not always well. So, but it's the hard conversation you want to have, because when hopefully it's a minority of your students who haven't met their targets. But that minority of students are the kids you worry most about. And it's the conversation you want to have, the parent of that kid and you in the same room, trying to think, what's the plan to fix this? And it really is a different situation when you have the parent there with you and you can talk about, are they getting time at home to work on this? Can they work after school on this? And the parent will say, I thought you get extra help on this. And Anthony might say, well, it's like, having that conversation is really important. It's not always easy. But as a crew leader, you really want to make sure kids are as ready as they can be for that, so you don't have too many of those. But we sure have some of them. Yes, please.
Who sets the learning targets?
Great. So the learning targets are set by teachers based on the content and standards that they have to cover for the curriculum. They take the most important part of that curriculum and standard, they reword it in language that kids can understand, and then they explain it to the kids and they ask them if they understand it, and the kids often don't. And then you have a conversation with the kids, and if it doesn't work, you reword the target until the kids get it. They get, this is where we're headed. This is what you expect us to be able to do. So for a semester, let's say in algebra, there's only going to be 6 or 7 long-term targets for a semester. But these are the 6 or 7 understandings and skills that if a kid can't do them by the end of first semester algebra, they should not be passing on to second semester. You have the math team create those so that they are responsible for. We would be derelict in our duty if we've sent these kids on without these skills. And I'll just say that wasn't the way it was when I was in school. When I was in school, you could get a D in algebra and go on to the next thing and only understand 1 or 2 of the 6 things that you should have really understood. So this is it's a high stakes push, and the teacher should have control over that, what those targets are. Okay, I'm going to end with film. Last one. This is Casco Bay High School. You saw that girl from Rwanda at Casco Bay High School. That's another one of these regular public district schools, 100% college schools that I'm very proud of. One of my Harvard students just made a film of a project that's taking place right now with those students. And he made a film of last year's students doing it. So I thought it'd be a really nice way to end for you.
This is an incredible responsibility to try to listen so intently that she will reveal that part to you that is very unique, specific to her and personal. So we have to go in with a style and mode that is honoring and listening to unearth that. And the more you explore these questions in the text, I think the better prepared we'll be to do that. So thank you.
And they have to map this narrative. And then they have to make it happen. They have to make the change and the tweaks. But no, and the conversations they have, no, I really think it was about his role with his father. I think that's got to be the driving force. He became the man of the family. And someone else saying, no, I really think it's that actually, it's about the storm and what happened at school during that time. I really think he was struggling in school, and we have to get out of school, and and they have to work that out. In a way, and they are compelled to do that because it's real. Every single person ever has an experience, some kind of experience that stretches them, that moves them, that makes them discover things about themselves.
As an individual from Portland, Maine, I impacted a student from the far Rockaways who was affected by Hurricane Sandy.
By interviewing him, that was for me, it was a culmination to all my research and everything that I learned about previously, because it was a live person that was affected from natural disasters.
They wanted to tell us their story, and then it turned into almost forgetting about that this is a part of my education. I'm going to get a grade for it, and I'm going to get credit for it and move on because of it. But it also became a big part of being this person has an amazing story, and I need to share it, because if I don't, nobody else they won't have the opportunity otherwise to share it. And it was that was the biggest motivation for me.
It got huge. Reflecting on that and looking back, it's wow, it didn't seem that big when we were there. It was just oh, we're just taking a trip to do this, but it got huge, and you don't realize that until even now. It's still just sinking in that the work we did had that big of an impact. So the reflections it just gets deeper and deeper, and it goes on for a while. It's still going on.
The thing I learned along the way, the biggest thing I learned eventually, was that when you have to make sense of somebody else's narrative, and you realize that this person has a narrative, you suddenly realize that you have a narrative. and that your own story your own life has a story that has a trajectory, and that you are a player in that story, and that you get to define that, and it will unfold, and it has value. Because sitting across the table from somebody else, you realize that they have value. And so you can't help but realize that you do too.
There are so many different angles of reflection because there are so many different pieces.
Now I feel like I could get put into it that I wouldn't pick myself and learn how to work with that and collaborate
giving us the tools to make us like become the experts of the expedition.
You're asked to analyze this and try to figure out what the meaning
forcing us into different realms of ourselves, which we hadn't
It all came
seen
down to
before.
that one point where it was like we're actually making a difference.
Motivated to do really great work because you knew their story and you kind of like owed it to them to make their story the best.
And then when you come out with this piece or you finish this part of this project and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that.
Thanks.
Great. Okay. First of all, actually, maybe I should just, before I get to Ron, to thank just some of the organizers today, my friend Sheila Gilkinson and all the other folks who have put in a huge amount of time to organize this day under some pretty interesting conditions that we've had lately. So I just very much want to thank them for bringing this together, and, by the way, the Ontario Science Centre, and my friend Jan Murphy. Thank you. And don't forget those evaluations. Also, I really want to thank thank you, the professionals that are here today. We need to be reaffirmed in the work we do. We need to be reaffirmed. We need to make contact with one another to see one another's work, to see what it actually looks like. And so I'm very grateful for the people presenting. I'm also, frankly, just grateful for the conversations you may have had a chance to have with one another, to have that really good, deep discussion about your vocation and your profession, because to me, I think that's very, very important. And I think for all of us. Ron, by the way, challenged us a little bit at the beginning of the chat, and I think it's fair to do that. I think that's how we change. That's how we create things. The question about de-streamed students or streamed students and applied students, I mean, the irony of this is that when they developed the applied level program, and I remember I was there at the inception of it, because they asked with the idea is that the applied level student would be doing inquiry-based learning, that this would be practical things for these students we felt who really struggled. That was the idea. 15 years later, I think the debate has reached the cover of the Toronto Star, where it says, why are we doing this? My friend Mr. Harper from the ministry dropped in today. He's not the prime minister. This fellow's from the ministry. A very nice man and a very good teacher, by the way. Sent me an article saying, look, there are some districts now that are moving away from streaming students. And I know in our experience, we've been doing that. So I just wanted to tell you that that's certainly our thought, because God knows we want to reach out and make sure that our 84% graduation rate after 4 years is 100%. That's the goal. And we've made huge strides in the last 10 years to go from 63 to that 84. But we also know we need to go much further. The final thing before I thank Ron, by the way, is to thank the good students of Henry Carr. We just suddenly realized I've still got those cameras on me and I'm recording my every move. So, yeah. And thank you to Mr. Malik and the SHSM team and all those kids, people, because this stuff just doesn't happen. And I happen to know part of the story here about how hard this gentleman, Mr. Malik, and his principal worked to get that equipment, to get that material, and develop that professionalism. So thank you. It's just another living example of what the heck we're trying to do here. So thanks. So finally for Ron. Ron said that he comes from nowhere, and I understand that, because I grew up out in the country, actually, myself, and the closest mailing route was a little place called Everett. So coming from nowhere, I get. But Ron, I'd like you to know I think you've taken us somewhere. And in fact, maybe sometimes you have to go into the desert to learn and to become aware of things. And I think your ability to come here and take us through some very practical examples of where we need to go, at the same time, reaching out to the mind and the heart, if you will, is, I think, probably the most vital thing that we take from today. That need to make it real and to know that we're making the change, and we need to make the change. That's our moral call. And in these times, by the way, where I understand there's all sorts of, God knows, political pressures and sweeps, and we don't want to get wound up in that. What we want to always remember at the end of the day is that it's about our faith and about our call to help these kids. And so we'll weather through all those issues that we have because of that goal. And again, I just want to thank you, Ron, for being the clarion call, I suppose, to remain focused on that very important question. Never to push aside the issues that we see in front of us, but to remember what that ultimate goal is. So thank you very much, and we have a little card for you. So there we go, Ron. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let me just say, if urban districts in America had gone from 63% graduation rate, which is the average in the US right now, to 84%, it would be a miracle for our nation, for the US. It would be the biggest possible thing that could happen in education for us. So I know you've got some ways to go, but my goodness, congratulations.
Thank you. And I mean, and I really, you people in the room are the ones who are doing that. And I want everyone to understand that. And God knows I want the public to understand it as well. So can we finish with a prayer? It's a prayer, by the way, that I was supposed to read this morning, and I realized. What else is new? Another self-admission. Remember we heard about the pencil? You remember the pencil? Okay. So I reflect on the pencil, and then I thought, well, that's kind of weird. It's just kind of one of these reflection things, so I better end with a Hail Mary, which, Mary has come through for me in so many different ways in my life, I've got to tell you. So here is our prayer. Oh, it's not there. Okay. So I will read the prayer for you, and it's about the pencil. And again, sometimes I feel like I'm the guy who's in the sharpener, so pray for me. So anyway, here we are. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Oh, I'm now in the middle of the prayer. Please remember, free admission to the Science Center after this, so you can go wander around for the rest of the day. Thank you, Lord, for the Science Center. Okay. I think I'm teetering on blasphemy now. Dear Lord, thank you for this time together to sharpen our skills, to renew and refine our understandings. Thank you for the trust placed in us to make our mark, to change the lives of the students we teach for the better. Thank you for helping us to understand that what we endeavor may not work the first time, but that we may learn from these failures will lead to even greater successes. So thank you for your guidance as our greatest work comes when we live as instruments of your love. Amen. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Have yourselves a wonderful day, by the way, folks. And remember to fill out those assessment sheets. Take care. God bless.